Hi, I'm Yasmin. I'm a Jungian art therapist, and in this video I want to show you an exercise which combines Jungian active imagination with image making. So the reason why you might want to do this kind of an exercise is that it helps you to connect with that unconscious realm within you, which is a part of each of us. So our unconscious affects our daily life in a very big way, actually. And when we start to build a stronger relationship to it and we start to become more connected with it and mainly understand that symbolic language that it wants to speak to us through, then ultimately, when we work with that inner realm, things in our outer realm will start to change. So sometimes we'll notice in our life that we try to change things in our outer life, but they just keep feeling like they're stuck or they don't resolve. So when we work with our inner realm, we are working with the roots of those challenges. And as Jung said, everything that is within us is manifested into the outer life. So with that being said, I just want to go through a little bit of what active imagination is, a little bit on the background of it, and then we will move on to the art exercise. So active imagination is a method developed by Carl Jung, who was a Swiss psychologist and psychiatrist and the founder of analytical psychology. And this active imagination became one of the pillars of his psychology. And what it is a method of introspection in which we are observing the flow of our inner images without trying to control it. So what it means is seeing this imagery in our mind's eye, kind of like we do when we dream, but in active imagination, we are more aware of what is happening. But the object, as I said, is to build this dialogue between the conscious and unconscious and to give a voice to this unconscious realm and to the different sides of our personality that are alive within that realm. And Jung developed this method when he was going through a difficult time in his own life. At that time, he was also working on what is called the Red Book. So it was kind of like his journal where he made images, recorded his dreams and his experiences with these active imaginations. And when he developed this method, he was first very resistant to go into that unconscious realm. So there were a lot of symbolic material that was very strong that was coming up for him, and he knew that he needed to kind of confront that and kind of go into that and surrender to that, but it felt very difficult. So here is always kind of that part that the unconscious is this unknown place that can feel very dark and scary, and it's not necessarily a place that we willingly would like to go through. So it can feel difficult for understandable reasons. But once he did kind of surrender to those symbols and the material that was arising, he started to journey in this world through this method of active imagination. So while he worked a lot with dreams, he felt that the dream world could be very changing in a way that it wasn't a stable place to return to. But when he was working with this method of active imagination, he could always return to that world that was starting to build up there. He could always return to those figures and those scenes that were familiar. So in a way, this world of active imagination became a much more stable place than he felt that the dream world was. And he described his first experience with active imagination like this. So he said, "I caught sight of two figures, an old man with a white beard and a beautiful young girl. I summoned up my courage and approached them as though they were real people and listened attentively to what they told me. The old man explained that he was Elijah, and that gave me a shock. But the girl staggered me even more, for she called herself Salome. She was blind. What a strange couple, Salome and Elijah. But Elijah assured me that he and Salome had belonged together from all eternity, which completely astounded me. They had a black serpent living with them, which displayed an unmistakable fondness for me. I stuck close to Elijah because he seemed to be the most reasonable of the three and to have a clear intelligence. Of Salome, I was distinctly suspicious. Elijah and I had a long conversation, which, however, I did not understand." So, as you can see in this experience by Jung, in this active imagination, we can meet different figures, we can speak to them, we can ask them questions, we can have a dialogue with them. And through these kind of encounters, Jung himself, he discovered that there were these inner personalities within them that were working and moving within him autonomously. So over time, through this work that he did with not only active imagination, but also, of course, his dreams and making all these images through his creative imagination and exploration in his Red Book, he developed a set of inner characters that he would always return to, and the relationship with these characters became and turned into a kind of inner myth for him. So they revealed this inner myth within his soul, and it gave him such a profound feeling of direction and meaning in his life. And in the end, he became very interested and driven to understand what is the myth that he was living in. It was a question that he asked also for us all to think about. What is the myth that you are living? And through this active imagination process and through becoming aware of your dreams and doing creative work and working with your images, you are giving yourself the possibility to connect with that depth and to connect with the myth that is very much alive within you. So let's next go into the exercise itself. So there's 5 steps to the exercise. The first 4 are related to the active imagination, and then the 5th is gonna be the image making. So I'll be guiding you step by step into how to actually do this process of active imagination. So step 1 is to find a starting point, and a good starting point for an active imagination journey is, for example, something from your dream world. So this might be a scene or a figure that you find interesting. Usually when you start to relate and think about your dreams, there's going to be something that really kind of stands out. Usually something that's important, it's going to be the first thing that kind of comes into your head when you think about your dreams. So also, if you feel like there isn't anything in your dreams, or maybe you don't really see dreams that much or remember your dreams that much, then another starting point can be, for example, an emotion that you're feeling that you want to maybe uncover a little bit. So usually it's going to be something a little bit more challenging. So this can be a starting point. Also, a starting point can be an image. So if you already have a creative practice, you're kind of used to making images, or maybe you do art journaling, You might pick an important image that feels good to you, and you can use that image as the starting point. So whatever you pick, it's good to pick something that feels good to you. So something that is not gonna overwhelm you, especially when you first try the active imagination. If you haven't done it before, just pick something that feels safe for you and you feel relatively comfortable going into that place. So once you've picked your starting place that you want to use, then after that, you'll want to clear your mind and find a place of relaxation within yourself. So maybe you might have already your own way of doing this. So this is really a lot about being present in your body. So you'll want to find a comfortable place to sit, and then you'll want to close your eyes and maybe take a few breaths and just be present to whatever is going on in your body for a few minutes. So again, you might have your own way of doing this. So just if you have a preference on how to do this part, you can use your own style as well. So then step 3 is about entering that inner imagery that is related to the starting point. So for example, if you use the starting point from a dream, you would concentrate on that image, whether it's a scene, you could concentrate on being in that dream scene, just observing what is there. Maybe it's a figure from a dream, so you might imagine that figure being there in front of you. Maybe if it's an emotion, you just sit with that emotion and see what kind of image starts to arise. Or if it was an image from your art, you would pick a point in that image that you would enter. So you imagine that you are going into the image and exploring it that way. So the way Jung explained this was that you choose a dream or some fantasy image and concentrate on it by simply catching hold of it and looking at it. You can also use a bad mood as a starting point and then try to find out what sort of fantasy image it will produce or what image expresses this mood. You then fix this image in the mind by concentrating your attention. Usually it will alter as the mere fact of contemplating it animates it. So the important thing here is that you just kind of organically let the image unfold and reveal itself and reveal the story behind the image. So you don't try to change anything. And sometimes you can just sit there and nothing appears and nothing happens. And that's totally fine. You also have to accept that, and maybe you come back to that image later or you pick another starting point, but just don't try to force anything to happen. But often something will start moving and something will kind of start to live within that image. So then step 4 is to actively engage with what is happening in the image. So we moved from just observing the image into participating with that image. So we go into sort of deeper engagement. And for example, you might see figures in the scene in your inner images, and you could ask these figures questions, or the way that Jung described it was, if you recognize your own involvement, you yourself must enter into the process with your personal reactions, just as if you're one of the fantasy figures, or rather as if the drama being enacted before your eyes were real. And while you're doing this kind of engagement with the image, at this point, don't try to interpret anything that is happening. So Jung felt that this kind of process of understanding and integrating the material from the active imagination exercise was important, but it's not the same thing as interpreting. So Jung felt that experiencing the meaning is about letting the image unfold over time, and then taking the wisdom of the imaginative part of us seriously, and then applying concretely these messages into your life. So you can also ask these inner images to guide you in your life. You can ask them questions, and they can give you answers in which you can use, and you can incorporate these things in your life. So then the fifth step is to make an image, and I'm going to soon be going over that. I'm going to show you an example of the image that I made, and I'll tell you about my active imagination exercise as well. And here you can use any materials that you wish. So even if you're not someone who actively makes art, it's not about what this image looks like, but you'll just want to pick some important thing that you felt or experienced in the exercise. So it might be a single figure. It might also be an emotion that was present in this active imagination that you want to express. Or alternatively, you can make an image of an important scene that was happening there. So pick something that felt important to you and make an image of it. And the reason that we make an image of it is that we bring it alive into the concrete material world in that way. And we also give a message through image making into our unconscious that the world is important to us. We value it, and we want to spend time with it, to build a relationship with it, just like we would with any human relationship. And often when we make images of this kind of unconscious material, it also becomes more real to us. We see the reality of its existence within us because we see it in a very concrete way in front of us. So let's go into the example that I made. I picked a dream as the starting point for this exercise, and in that dream I was in a room with a few other people, and in that room I felt the presence of some kind of a spirit, which none of the other people in that room saw or experienced. So in that dream, I felt very anxious about that spirit and no one else being able to see it. So when I went into the active imagination exercise, the first thing that happened was that the other people in the room disappeared, and I was just together with this spirit who had two parts to him. So one part was this kind of ethereal, boundaryless part, which I painted in as the turquoise cloudy shape. But then the spirit also had this body, a more concrete form or part of him, and I was able to talk to that part of him. And the spirit said that he wanted to integrate inside of my body, and I was very reluctant. I didn't feel that he was bad, but I also couldn't trust him. So I feel like in this dream scene and the active imagination, there was a lot of things happening with the theme of boundaries. And then through the discussion that we had together, we decided and agreed on that we would get to know each other a little bit better, and that I would keep a little bit of a distance, at least until then. So this is definitely a scene that I would want to return to, and I would want to go meet the spirit again to have a little bit better of an understanding of who the spirit is. I've also put this process into a free guide for you to download if you'd rather follow it that way. So you can download that from the link below. So thanks for being with me here today. I hope you enjoyed the exercise, and let me know in the comments what were your experiences, or if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.